Good news here, Playbasis has a new AI SDK. It's completely open source. You can find it on the official Playbasis GitHub repo, and then you can find the release of the Playbasis AI SDK. And this is completely open source using MIT license. So you are free to go ahead and use this in pretty much however way you'd like, integrated into your personal apps, educational apps, or even your commercial apps. I want to show you guys what it looks like. If you actually follow these developer documentations, you'll understand the architecture of the SDK, which is effectively an embeddable widget. So what does that mean? Let's take this orb here and click it. Then what we'll see is we are now presented with this kind of super app type of Playbasis UI. And it effectively gives your users a whole bunch of new activities that they can go ahead and pursue within your app. So basically, if you wanted to add more time spent and more fun activities for your users to participate in, you can embed the Playbasis SDK and connect it with an API key and your tenant, and you'll be able to define rules and badges and leaderboards and quests and pretty much run an entire engagement-based campaign for your users. So those are things like playing games or reading contents, checking in, unlocking badges, ranking up on the leaderboards, maybe even getting some prizes or definitely earning XP, experience points. So what we normally like to suggest for people is you want to start with non-monetary rewards. So these are going to be purely virtual rewards, and experience points is a great way to sort of provide feedback for your users. This is not a currency in the sense that you get rewarded and then you cash out these points. These are points that are only going to accumulate over time. And the way that it's typically designed is that the more that you engage with the features, the more time you spend, the more activities you participate in within the app or the community, all of those basically give you experience points. And you can use these experience points to level up within the community. That can mean things like ranking up on the leaderboard. So here you can see that NONG PO is the #1 player. He's the season champion. He has earned the most total experience points. And what NONG PO represents is he's basically like the perfect player. He never misses a day. He's active every single day, 365 days of the year. So he is pretty much the perfect template. And with Playbasis, we provide this example player so that when we provision your database, the shape of the data can fit NONG PO. So NONG PO can basically be the example player of what a fully maxed out, max level, unlocked everything, has done it all, and is ranked #1. What does that look like? And for each business or each use case for Playbasis, that would look a little different. But the point is that when you're designing these sort of long-term engagement strategies for your customers, your users, your employees, your students, you really want to kind of like paint a picture of what the end state would look like, and then work backwards from there. And that's what the power of gamification or even play-based mechanics like Playbasis offers. That's what this can enable for you. Effectively, you're creating pathways and guided journeys for your users to level up. And what does leveling up within your organization mean? Well, it could be things like, having a perfect month. A perfect month may be that you achieve maximum daily activity for an entire month, and you could earn that badge. This is a placeholder image, but we will soon be able to replace that with an actual cool badge. But here it's just demonstrating the functionality. It could be things like Platinum Collector. You could earn 50,000 lifetime points. And again, earning these experience points are all tied into the actions within the application itself. So it's an effective way of capturing the intensity of the usage, the depth of the usage, and effectively how experienced, how trained, how knowledgeable your users are within your ecosystem, within your environment. It becomes a new way for you to kind of filter and sort so that you can identify who those top players are in your user base, and also help the other players, the new players, by guiding them, by giving them an example. And so that's what NONG PO is here to do. The perfect player who never misses a day. There's an Easter egg here. If you visit NONG PO's profile and you click on his profile picture, you can earn 5 extra XP points up to, I think, 50 clicks per day. So it's a nice way for you to earn an extra 250 experience points just by interacting with the NONG PO profile picture. And then we will get into what else I wanted to share, which is the quest submission system. So the cool thing about, this is the EXP, this is essentially how to earn experience points. These are your core activities. So again, every app would be a little bit different, but you want to kind of identify about a dozen or so different actions or events that customers can take within your app. And that does include simple check-ins or daily logins, for example, to start streaks. And if you're within a fintech context, you might have things like financial literacy, educational modules, for example, or it could be things like making certain types of transfers, right? Peer-to-peer transfers, or making bill payments, or just consolidating spend on a particular card. What card issuers and banks would like customers to do is to consolidate their spend, because effectively that's how the banks get paid, is they are able to make interchange fees and make money on currency exchange. So they want to consolidate your monthly expenditure on their card or their wallet, because that's how they'll profit. And as an incentive to do that, they will typically create rewards programs. So these are going to be your credit card rewards, your loyalty points, your cashbacks, your discounts and coupons, and all the other offers. The idea of creating a new reward program is actually very central to almost all issuing card issuers. So these would be the banks themselves. The bank where you hold your deposit, or you have an account, or you've taken out maybe a debt instrument, and then you have a payment card that you can use against that account, or you can draw down from that account. And these issuers essentially work with merchant networks and coalition partners to create rewards programs. So these can be in the form of statement credits. They can be in the form of some percent cash back, some kind of bonus statement credit if you meet certain spend thresholds and targets. And of course, these are designed not to lose money. So the incentive design structure is very important, because it has to be economical, but it also has to be incentivizing and motivating for the end user. And what most of the issuers do is they have what is known as their card portfolios. And the card portfolio is, if you've ever looked at your debit card or your credit card, you'll notice that they all expire. They all have an expiration date. And so every year, banks evaluate the percentage of their portfolio where their cards are about to expire and need to be replaced or renewed with a new fresh card, new fresh account number, new expiration date. You can't extend those expiration dates. You just have to get a new card. And so these companies are always looking to create some new card campaigns or new co-branded cards for their customers. Essentially, what they want to do is try to capture what the consumer or their target demographic would be interested in. So you'll have cards that could be like really attractive to people who take lots of vacations, for example, or do a lot of business travel, or maybe they use their car for work or their trucks for work. They have to buy fuel, and so there could be cards that actually give them better rewards if they spend fuel category, going to the gas station, for example. So all of these cards have specific rewards programs, and the thing that Playbasis enables, if you will, is now with generative AI, we can actually create personalized loyalty programs. We can actually create personalized, hyper-personalized rewards programs using the power of Playbasis AI. So what I want to share with you today is how I can create financial goals and even create loyalty programs that are personalized to me. So let's say, for example, I have this personal agent, which lives within this widget, and the widget itself lives within your application. So if we recall, you can pop open the orb here that now reveals. So this could exist within your application or in your website without having to change anything fundamental about your website, other than on the front end, other than add in this one line code to install the widget, and then make sure that the widget is wired up with your credentials that Playbasis will provide you, so that it contains your database for your players according to your rules, and that becomes your program or your campaign, for example. So what Playbasis can allow is effectively, I now can say something like, I have a personal agent that is synced to my account within Playbasis. So me as the player, I can actually chat with AI about my profile and all the play-based mechanics, all the points, all the quest missions, leaderboards, anything that has anything related to the Playbasis system. This agent actually has the power, the ability to go off and for me, make changes, do different things. So for example, let's say it says here that it knows my name, it knows my experience points, and it knows I have a couple of active goals. And what I want to do is, let's say, because this is designed in this particular case for financial, within a fintech or e-wallet or mobile banking or other financial product environment, let's say I want to save a certain amount of money. So let's say, help me save. Let's say I need to save like $5,500 by March, let's just say 2026, or March 27, 2026. But actually, I need to save it. I need to have that money before this date. So let's give it like a week before that. I already have one here on the 20th. I don't want to overlap that one. So let's say I need to save $5,000 for healthcare expenses. Let's just say, okay, so I have some healthcare expenses coming up. I need to take care of NONG PO, for example, and I need to come up with this amount of money. And so what this agent helps me do is it can create a quest mission goal, if you will, help me track my progress and stay on track. So I've now created that, and as you can see here, it says save $5,500 for healthcare expenses. And it's done a very simple thing, which is the AI breaks it up into a couple of steps. I mean, the AI can be tuned and tweaked to break it up into different kind of configurations or milestones. But by default, it's generative AI, so it has some general guidelines, but it will just reason through and try to figure out what makes sense as the milestones to track. And what it's saying is that, like, okay, you have your target goal is 5,500, and I think it automatically just makes that a monthly quest, so it just does it as a month. It seems like it didn't parse the exact date, so I'll go back and actually iterate on the prompting and context engineering to fix that. But it actually created this quest for me, so I now have this saved as a to-do list or as a reminder or as a helper, and now this is integrated into the Playbasis system, so it can give me experience points and bonus points, and I can actually track my progress, which I think is probably one of the most important key concepts to take away from the idea of Playbasis, is that the visualization of progress is extremely powerful. And if you notice, most of the fintech apps all lead with your portfolio or your account balance chart, and there's always this chart that's going up and to the right over time, right? So you're making forward progress, you're making exponential progress, you're making steady progress. In some way of measuring, we are tracking your progress over time. It could be your account balance, it could be your stock portfolio balance, so on and so forth. This idea of using charts and graphs basically to visualize our progress in real life tasks is an extremely powerful concept, and that's something we wanted to bring here to the widget display. So we have this idea of a composite score, which could be thought of as a multivariate look at your overall health or standing within the community, plus with where you want to be. And again, we've set NONG PO as the perfect player, so he has the perfect 100 score, because I gotta give 100% to NONG PO. I can't, he's got to have 100%. So he is essentially the example and the guide, the avatar, the player, the hero that I want to work towards. And so we use NONG PO here as the example. And then for many of us, we'll probably start from a lower base, but over time we will continue to grow. And visualizing that over time helps us put things into perspective and gives us a sense of the overall trajectory. And for most charts, we're wanting to accumulate something, then that would be the direction of up and to the right, for example, right? So that's why you see this chart here. And it looks like a financial chart, but this is more of a play-based sort of game mechanic type of design. We can also see that I have a snapshot of some of my active quests, and I have this kind of calendar or grid view of activities where I can check in every day and do some kind of activity, and that helps me keep my streaks alive. The leaderboard is there as well in the overview page, and I can see some of the other community members. Now, the thing also to be reminded about with Playbasis is that we don't actually need personal identifiable information. So what we use are things known as a player ID and maybe a display name, which could be your nickname, or it could just be like a random code, so to speak. It doesn't actually have to be your real name, your real location, your real account balances, or any of that. In fact, we work in sort of a partnership mode. So we rely on our partners, the people who integrate our technology, to maintain their accounts and their data on their side with their customers. And for those customers who want to opt in to participate and join in these campaigns, they can do that. And the data that they share with Playbasis is only going to be the game-related or the play-based or the gamify, the engagement data. So these are going to be things that you would do specifically within the context of a Playbasis system. So those would be things like going through and completing different quests and missions and unlocking badges and other forms of virtual rewards. And in some cases, we would provide the ability for users, or administrators, I guess you could say, to plug in prizes. And in some cases, we might be able to provide some prizes. These could be more like monetary prizes. They could be like gift certificates. They could be gift vouchers, gift cards, for example. So there's a whole bunch of different ways to do that. Or we can just pass this information back to our client to say, NONG PO is ranked this. He's done all these activities, all of these trophies, all of these badges, his quests, his missions, his leaderboard ranking. Since you know this about NONG PO, and we've created this challenge or this game or this campaign, would you like to convert NONG PO's Playbasis data into cashbacks or into account balance credits or statement credits, right? Rewards of monetary value. So that's how we work in partnership with our clients. It can be considered kind of like a white label solution. So you can actually style this how you would like. If you'd like to change the theme, you can do that. And because it's all agentic, we can make that possible with just a prompt. So you don't need to be, for example, a developer to make some changes. And over time, we might even have special events. Like, for example, there could be a Lunar New Year event where you could get a lucky packet, for example. And the lucky packet would be maybe some reward, some top-up wallet balance, or again, the cashbacks, the vouchers, the coupons, the credits, those sorts of things. Those are always fun. But the main point is we should focus on the non-monetary awards or rewards first, and essentially build this almost like this extra dimensions of data about our users. Because if we have purely a transactional relationship with our users, and we're not investing in the depth of our kind of relationship with them, their engagement, their customer satisfaction, how they're learning and growing and blossoming and transforming into sort of like a better user, a better customer, a better person in win-win-win aligned, incentive aligned scenarios, right? So if you becoming more financially healthy starts with you becoming more financially literate, and if that also involves you becoming more financially engaged, and if we do those things, kind of thinking like from like our end goal state and then working our way backwards, then we can reason that over time, over a certain amount of time, you would be likely to, if you continued this trajectory, you would be likely to improve your financial position over time because you are more financially literate, more financially engaged, which leads to better financial health, better financial habits, and when you are equipped with all of this, then you will have more financial resources available to you over time. So this is an example of what the new Playbasis AI SDK provides. You can think of this as a way to supercharge any application with a whole host of different modules that all are designed around your use case. So whether this is health and health insurance or a wellness, financial wellness application, or it's something where you want people to become like, training, on the job training and doing like quest missions, learning modules, earning badges, earning certifications, having friendly competitions on the leaderboard. Maybe it's not just an individual leaderboard, but it could be a team-based leaderboard where all of the players within the team, their points, their progress bubbles up into a team progress. And then the team view could even be like, different cities and zip codes, for example, or states or whatever. So the idea is that Playbasis becomes kind of like your compass. And it's very much focused on from the player's perspective. So although our partners are very important and we rely on them to adopt our solution, fundamentally, we're taking a player-focused view here. We're trying to think about what would be, just like we would if we were designing a AAA game for Xbox or PlayStation. It's like, what would actually be fun for the user? Like, what would actually drive like more engagement with the product? Like, what would be more satisfying, more rewarding, more enriching experiences for the users? How do we find the fun in our product? If there's not a whole lot of fun to begin with in the first place, then this massively provides a boost and a step function. And if you're already a fun kind of company or application, then this is sort of like a multiplier effect on top of that. So we effectively take the best of what the latest and greatest LLM models can produce because we integrate with all of them, and we make them even better by adding in all the additional context and capabilities that Playbasis brings to bear. So if you were to decide that you wanted to code a new app and you wanted LLMs to help you to do that, whatever the best that the LLMs can produce today and tomorrow in the state of the art, well, Playbasis will always be able to multiply on top of that. We'll be able to take the best outputs that the LLMs can do, and then because we have such a specific kind of unique perspective on how applications should be designed and what user data tables look like, and how do we add more data to our database and create more of a three-dimensional or multi-dimensional view of our users across different axes that are not only transactional. Because transactional relationships typically are under tremendous competitive pressure and tend to be a race to the bottom, because if it's just transaction, then people will always go for the best price, and there won't be, or the best value or the best money, whatever that is, and they're not loyal necessarily to you or the brand that you've created, but they're actually just loyal to the reward system. And so what Playbasis endeavors to do is to provide a much richer form of value-added services to delight customers, to make sometimes the hardest things in life more fun and achievable. And using the power of generative AI means we can create quest submissions on the fly, we can provide personalized chat experiences, customer support, and eventually, it could be the case where customers want to use generative AI within their products. Right now, they're using ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Grok, but not everyone can afford a subscription, for example, to those accounts. And although they do provide free services, those services are not necessarily integrated into some of the apps that they care most about with a native integration. What Playbasis can provide is effectively giving all of your users access to the latest AI models, grounded in the Playbasis context and backend systems with guardrails. And then you can effectively deliver an AI agent to your customers that lives within your wallet or within your app. So it becomes a new value-added service. And beyond just the customer support stuff, which AI chat is already good at doing, agentic means we can actually go and take action. We can actually create things. We can create documents, plans, images, games, websites, documents, so many different things. So it becomes a unique vector whereby you can now allow customers to access both Playbasis and AI within a plug-and-play, basically, SDK that drops into your existing application and massively speeds up your time to market and helps your customers find the value much, much faster. I was doing deep research on the new Playbasis code base, and I asked several of the pro models to do deep web search and to scan all of my technical scripts and code and tell me exactly, quantify how much would you get sped up if you were able to use Playbasis, and compare that to a traditional way of deploying these kinds of gamified loyalty programs, if you will, or quantified self, or however you'd like to describe these play-based concepts. And it told me that this is 5,000 times faster, and that's based on actual AI reasoning, 5,000 times faster. So another way to think about it is what would take, 6 to 9 months can now be delivered end to end in a day. So you can effectively supercharge your app with your own, your own API, your own tenant within the Playbasis SDK, because as shared earlier, you have access to this as open source. So if you'd like to create your own versions of these, you are more than welcome to. The code is available and online in GitHub. It is available for you to modify as you'd like. It's MIT license. So this image is a little bit slow to load. And you just need to go to the Playbasis repo, and then you'll find the Playbasis AI SDK within that. And here are just some ideas of what the design could potentially look like. It doesn't have to look like these colors. I mean, it depends on your brand, your look and feel. But trying to figure out why this image is taking time to load. Okay, here it is. So this is basically the same thing that I shared earlier, right? So this is an example. I shared this to the Playbasis repo on GitHub, so you can actually go ahead and grab this, save you a bunch of development time, and even nowadays, like not just time, but also the tokens to develop all this code, right? So if you're constrained, if you're limited on tokens, and you might be using Cursor, Windsurf, Anti-Gravity, or Visual Studio Code, Cloud Code, whatever. You could technically probably eventually build something like this after I don't know how many days or hours or weeks. But at the same time, it would cost you time, and it would definitely cost you against your tokens quota. Or you could take this and remix it, iterate, build on top of it. And that is a far better way to use your token quotas, right? Because those are limited, they're in very short supply and super high demand. So everyone wants access to more AI. You can imagine building all of these screens. These are multiple files of thousands lines of code each, and on top of that, it's super well tested and it looks, I think, fantastic. It doesn't come like this out of the box if you're just prompting the LLMs. Like you would get something like this, but there would be bugs all over the place. Mobile responsive issues. You'd probably have tons of style sheet issues you'd have to deal with. So that's not even functional stuff. That's just on the look and feel of the design. But by working with the Playbasis SDK, you're getting a robust solution, high quality solution, great design, tested, fun, works, and integrates with AI. So I just think that this, I believe, will be the future of financial apps, but beyond just financial apps, beyond just fintech. It could, you could apply Playbasis to a whole bunch of different use cases. You could apply this to telecoms. You could apply Playbasis to utilities, to shopping, to health and wellness. Pretty much every major sector and industry can benefit from Playbasis, either internally with their internal customers or internal workforce, I guess you could say, or even their supply chain partners, and on the other side with their customers. And effectively what Playbasis aims to do is reduce the entropy. What is entropy? Entropy is basically, you can think of it as I have a room that I've been running the air conditioning in, and it's at a nice, cool 23 degrees Celsius. But I'm in a room and the door is closed. When I open the door, the room temperature outside is going to be much hotter than that. When I open the door, the air molecules from the hot air from the outside and the cool air from inside start to cross over and trade places and mix around and intermingle and intermix. And this creates, people call it chaos because it's extremely hard to model, right? It's impossible for you to mathematically model every single atom and molecule in the air and the direction that it will go. So we call this a chaotic system. But eventually we will understand how to model these even better. But that concept of you have perfect order, and now you've got this blending, this fusion happening of two different states, and that's entropy. It's this change, this information change, this data change that is the opposite of full and complete knowledge in steady state. Okay, so entropy is that. I call entropy in the form of like what Playbasis is trying to do is reduce the entropy. So there's all the things that the banks and the credit card companies and the big companies want you to do with their business. And they have those in their business models and in their internal targets and everything else. And you as a customer itself are on the other side. You're their customer. So they're basically trying to sell you something or offer you a service that you could pay for. And there's all this information that we don't have as a customer, which is what are their incentives? What is the business's cost structure? What are they selling it to me at a markup, at a good price? What are the incentives? Like, what are the incentives here? And so on one side, customers see tons of advertising and they don't really know what to trust, so they used to look at reviews. And then reviews started to get sort of gamed, I guess you could say, or people started to post fake reviews to bump up their score so they could have 4 or 5 stars. And so then reviews started to become less of a signal. And then people started looking at social media and then they could see, things are going viral and there's all these likes and some accounts have tons of followers. But then and so that gave a sense of authority. But then when bots and bot farms and spammers and scammers and all this other stuff, that reduced the trust. So then all of a sudden the information that the weight we used to put into someone having a viral post and then having tons of followers, we now have to double check to say, is this even a real person? Is this real engagement, or is this like farmed somehow? So essentially what happens is the end users, the customers today, there's a sort of a lack of trust in certain institutions. Definitely, review scores matter. So it's so important that an app have, or a restaurant for that matter, have like a 4 out of 5 stars at least, right? Like below that, it almost becomes, you can't even entertain, being a guest at their restaurant, because you just mark it off your list. You would say, there's no way I'm going to a 2 or 3 star reviewed restaurant, and then that's just not going, that's just not going to be my first choice at all. So, we have all these signals, but then we don't really know what is the real signal, and so there's this lack of trust, and then there's also kind of like a lack of knowledge. And to be honest, a lot of people do want the shortcut, right? They do want to follow the playbook. They do want to follow a protocol that will allow them to max whatever attribute or statistic that they care about in that particular time. So if they're looking to max their, let's say their bench press or their deadlift, then they'll be in the gym and they'll be looking up exercises and routines to max that part of their new personal best in terms of weightlifting. If they are trying to max their credit score so they can get access to the best card offers, the lowest rates, the most privileges, there are certain playbooks. There are things you can do. That is kind of like how the entropy is lowered a bit, because you can actually follow these plans. And even if you don't know the exact quantifiable change that every one of your actions makes over time, you generally feel like you're headed in the right direction, or you have a good sense. You pretty much know from like a compass standpoint, should I be going north, south, east, west, right? Like at least let me know the general direction I'm trying to go into or go towards. So people do want these kind of like how to win sort of strategy guide playbooks, like how to speed run, right? Like all the drudgery, and how do I just get to how do I optimize this and just get to like the best outcome and the quickest amount of time that I can, right? With like the least effort. Or how do I get to the top of the leaderboard in some particular sport or something that I'm competing in, right? Like I want to be the most influential, Thai food reviewer, and so like pretty much I can look up on YouTube, I can look up on the internet, like sort of the playbook. Okay, you have to post your videos consistently, and you want to have these things in your title and your hooks and your thumbnails. And they're all trying to essentially reduce the entropy. So all of the unknown, all the incalculable stuff, it's this disconnection from, that there's a recipe, there's some rules. Someone has defined it on the other side, exactly how we're ranking or how we're scoring. But they don't necessarily share that, because it could be gamed or it could lose its effectiveness if people could just optimize for that, right? It loses some of its authenticity or its value. So it is sometimes a bit of a black box in that sense, whereby you have generally the idea or something, but then there's a bunch of fancy math that we can't calculate that actually does the final rankings or the boostings of posts or who it shows it to, or how viral it makes certain things go, and so on and so forth. Or when you load your feed, like what is the first thing I'm going to see? Like there has to be a lot of thought that goes into that, because like it's very important for these companies to capture engagement, because the biggest companies in the world, whether it's Google, Meta, even Microsoft and Apple, they really would like you to spend more time with their products. And since there tend to be all technology or digital products, that means things like apps and services, websites, and those kinds of things, applications. So there's this tremendous battle for user time and attention. And the most engaging apps are the most challenging apps to compete against. Like, it would be super hard to launch from scratch a TikTok clone or competitor and have and it have any chance of gaining any meaningful traction, or taking meaningful market share from TikTok globally, right? It's just too dominant at this point, and it's too much, in the vernacular of everyone. Like, they know what a TikTok is, and but there are some features and things that other apps will kind of adopt or copy. So it could be the short form video format, or the stories format, or the feed format. All of these, though, are algorithmically ranked. So at the end of the day, pretty much almost all of machine learning, like so much of algorithms and machine learning, basically comes down to leaderboard ranking systems, ranking and re-ranking, methodologies, right? The most simplistic way of ranking something or ordering something is using chronological or reverse chronological time, like the time it was created, or you could say the time it was updated, or you could say like who has the most of this or the least of this. But if you created a leaderboard where it was just like always ranked based on some unachievable target for most people, then it wouldn't be very engaging. So the trick here then is to think even deeper and think, how do I present a leaderboard which will be inspiring and motivating to my users? And that could mean making many different leaderboards for different groups of users. And I think the way you could imagine it, if TikTok were to do this, would be that, if you had only 1,000 followers, then you would, I'm trying to think how I could put this. Basically, it's pretty unfair for someone posting something who only has 1,000 followers compared to someone who posts something and they have 1,000,000 followers. In terms of unfair in the sense of, how is it unfair? I guess it's just like the competition, like you're dealing with someone who's like an expert level, super champion at social media, and they're competing, and the new person who's just got a few followers is already competing against them, which is kind of a weird way of doing like sort of matchmaking or ranking. I think TikTok initially, to get more growth, resolved this by automatically boosting new users to have the chance to go extremely viral, right? So it would sort of change the scale, change the ranking, so that it would specifically look for accounts that didn't have huge followers and then make them, one of their videos, go very viral. Crazy number, like way more than their follower count, to encourage them to say, look, you have a chance to go viral on our platform, just keep posting. But there's a mechanism built in that says, like, even if you're not super famous or super popular, you could still go viral on TikTok. Now, I don't know if that growth mechanic is still in place, but again, it is an example of one of those things I call entropy, which is the information, the black box between, or like the way that the algorithms and the rankings and the leaderboards and the incentive structures, the multiplier effects, the coefficients, how all the formulas are written, and how we as the users, the end users, pretty much have no idea how any of that works. We can read about it online, people try to dissect it, but that's kind of the secret sauce to a lot of these companies. And it's not just TikTok. Like, I was talking about rankings again. The example is Google, right? Google search results. They are essentially a page rank or ranking of all the websites and all the documents that are score on a relevance score. So again, they create a scoring system which it's not based on a keyword count necessarily. It's based on all these other factors, like the credibility of the links pointing back to your source materials, and how authoritative your content is, or your profile is. If you've been a good citizen, you've been a great, helpful, popular member of the community, those kinds of things. So there's all these different variables that go into it. But whether it's the TikTok feed to show you what is the first video you're going to see when you open up the app, whether it's the Google search results where people want to be the number one ranked for certain keywords, like Playbasis used to be, for years we were like number one ranked on certain keywords like gamification platform and other related keywords. So, and we worked really hard as a group, as a company, to build that reputation. And it came with the knowledge that this is going to be something that is developed over time. So in anything that compounds, you want to start as soon as possible. So what I think gamification can do, or this kind of play-based stuff can do, people who understand games or understand video games or other forms of digital apps in the digital app ecosystem, like even investing apps, is like the nature of compounding, of putting in the time, knowing that you're planting seeds now because you need them. You need time to pass for you to be able to go back and say, oh yeah, remember I was posting about that back then. I'm still posting about it. That's my authority. That's my authority. I'm an authority figure, I'm a thought leader on these particular topics, and I've been posting about them, and building up a legacy, a history on that particular topic. So that's what I would do if I was optimizing for Google search results. But now in today's day and age, it's like financial information is completely private and siloed, and so it's kind of hard to share information in a community around like how do we better our financial selves. It seems it's very much a single player game, even though none of us can do this alone. Like the market, by definition, involves multiple actors, multiple parties. So for me to sell something and make money, I need a buyer on the other side, right? And so I need a market clearing price, and I need supply and demand. So it's kind of interesting how finance is one of those things where there are communities online and people sharing like how to how to become how to improve your financial profile so that you get access to better financial products. Then how can you do arbitrage? How can you take out home equity lines of credit to invest in the stock market because it will grow faster than the equity in your home, but then you can borrow against the equity of your home that is already appreciated over time. So you can sort of like, you can add multiplier effects. And then like if you take out a credit card balance or you pay off this credit card with a newer credit card, the newer credit card will give you an incentive to transfer your balance. And then if you spend a minimum of like $1,000 on the new credit card within the first month, you'll get like a $500 saving credit. So it's effectively cash back. You don't have to pay that. So there's all these plays to do, right? And it goes throughout all of the financial world. And because knowledge is now becoming delivered to us through AI and agents, I think increasingly people will turn to AI for help on how to do various things. And they will rely less on just doing random Google searches or posting about it in social media asking for advice. I think this will become something where more and more people will talk to their AIs about their goals, their what they hope to achieve in life, help them create plans and to-do lists, and essentially become kind of like they're the player two in a multiplayer game where now they have someone who can assist them, who can co-pilot with them, who can help navigate and those kinds of things. So I believe like this idea of a personalized AI that can basically create rewards programs tailored to you that would be very motivating for you, not based on someone who designed it trying to launch some card program, with the card issuer only. Although some of those are really good, I have to admit. There are some of the rewards, but the problem is that not everyone is eligible for those. So there's some really good. There's really some interesting rewards programs, but again, that's not necessarily not everyone is necessarily eligible for those because those require having minimum account balances and the credit score that you need to qualify. So for everyone else who's, especially if you're a young person today, you're like, gosh, how do I'm looking at my bank account balance and I'm like, I need to get more money in here. How do I do that? And my bank account app has no way to help me with that right now, unless you apply for loans or those kinds of things. But none of the apps that we use to help us, settle our accounts, pay our bills, so forth, none of them are very proactive in like helping me find ways to actually make money or save money. So it's just very transactional, and that creates opportunities for things like neobanks, new fintechs, whether it's Coinbase, Robinhood, Chime, any of these like neobanks or fintech apps. Right, there are some apps where you can get paid for hours worked as an advance on your future payroll. Like you can actually check into your job location and say, I'm working these hours, and the app will say, okay, you went to work today. You need access to, you're going to get paid in 2 weeks, but if you want, I can go ahead and pay you for the day as your financial app because I'm in the business of doing that, and I'll just take a small fee for that. And that could be a service that people really like and really want more, for example, right? So there's so many different financial products. Now, the question is like, does that mean that this has to be a dedicated app by itself, or does it become a feature bundled in or a module within an existing application or wallet? And I think that's what the key lesson from living in Asia for all these years is that like the super app concept is very real and it's very powerful. So whether that's Grab or Tokopedia, WeChat, Line, for example, all these apps want to become the everything app, and they're starting with some kind of high frequency app usage, app use case. So high frequency app use case, chatting with friends, WeChat, right? So you're going to be chatting with friends all the time. Sometimes you're going to be asking your friends to send you money, or you want to send money to friends. Let's build that into a feature, and then let's actually make this now the number one way to pay and get paid possibly in China, or even Alipay, for example, right? Grab here in Thailand has point system. You can get food, you can get delivery, you can have people go get groceries for you, you can rent cars, right? That's another example of the Sleeper app. And the idea is that like it's so competitive to even get someone to download your app, let alone use it, that once you actually have an install, you have a user install, you really want to keep them around. You want them to find a lot of value in your app so that they don't just uninstall it. And you want them to hopefully put your app on their home screen so that it becomes one of the 5 to 10 most frequently used apps per day, because there is a correlation from a very high level. There's a correlation between time spent in applications and revenue generated for the application providers, right? You spend more time in TikTok and Facebook. Facebook and TikTok are going to make more money because they're able to send you more advertising. If you start spending more time in particular fintech apps, because now that becomes your primary way of making payments, managing your wallet, then over time that fintech is going to be able to make enough from small fees and these microtransactions. So they want you to be in the app more. They want you to use it more, right? So whether it's viewing content or making these transactions, or in video games, for example, right? Like it's going to be hard for me to sell you the level 1000, level 100, rare kind of, shield or bow and arrow for the fantasy, adventure game, right when you first start playing, because you don't even know if you like the game yet. So you're gonna play it, and you're going to spend time, and you're going to level up, and you're going to be following the golden paths and finding fun and being surprised and delighted enough times that you really become invested into it. And now all of a sudden you built up a profile, and now all of a sudden your character looks way different than it did when you started. And now it almost feels like if you deleted the account, you would feel a sense of loss. Like you now have something to lose if your character was, if you just abandoned your character. So then once you're at the point where you're like, wow, okay, I'm really into this game. Like I can imagine I've already spent however many hours playing it. I can imagine spending another 2 to 4x, more time of that. Based on everything I've experienced so far, I would be very comfortable paying a small microtransaction to go ahead and unlock a virtual world, or a virtual sword, or a magic level up, or some power up consumable, like energy drink in the game, for example. Like, because you're invested in it at that point, and now you're like, you're giving yourself the permission to go ahead and have that fun, because it's worth it to you. So all of these apps are basically trying to drive more engagement, and that's why increasingly you're going to start to see this super app concept become the more and more competitive. You're going to start to see, already you see TikTok Shop is now really adding in e-commerce in a big way into what used to be just a short form social media. And actually it wasn't even like a friends connection type of social network. It was mostly just a discovery of content social network. So, but we don't have at all like native e-commerce in YouTube, for example. Like you can link your store, you can list products on your YouTube account, but YouTube is still YouTube. So there's no YouTube shop that's being built into YouTube. It's still primarily the content platform for video content. But TikTok is now saying they have enough visibility in their users. They can see what their users are interested in. They can see what the advertisers on their platform are advertising. And it makes sense for them to essentially close the loop a bit more from content, advertising, direct response to the purchase and transaction, all within one application. You definitely see that in apps like Coinbase and Robinhood, where they have tons of new services all within the same app for the most part, not really requiring you to go and download other apps. It's all being put into the same app so that you have your account, your balance, and then you can move between their different products more seamlessly. And it's important because it's so expensive to get people to even find out about your app and then download it and then use it and not delete it. So it's it's expensive, not for any it's not mandatory that you spend money to launch an app and to put it out there, but you would effectively be drowned out by all of the other popular apps that no one would ever hear about your app or even know about it. Because even the App Store, again, is a leaderboard. It is a ranking system. You go to the App Store, it tells you what the most popular apps are. Here's the most popular apps, the top grossing. So a lot of these same concepts come back to this, what Playbasis is decoding and then making into mechanics and playbooks that businesses can leverage, right? And increasingly, we're going to be trying to drive the cost of delivering Playbasis down low enough such that we can open it up to more other companies beyond just only the globally financial, systemically important banks and the huge telecom companies and the global reinsurance companies and the companies that we typically worked with in the past, because they could afford it and because it was worth it to them, right? We in the past typically focused on companies that had very large install base, a very large number of customer relationships, some form of a CRM so that they could manage that relationship, and they wanted to go deeper with those customers, right? They wanted to engage with them deeper. They wanted to cross-sell them products, wanted to teach them about new products, incentivize them, reward them, and so forth. So we would look for companies that had massive subscriber bases or accounts, and that would have been our target. But in the age of generative AI, now that everyone is becoming kind of like a weekend developer and startups are able to get started with much, much less funding than before, it's, for me, I think for Playbasis to grow even faster is to double down on our open source. So remember, you can recall that Playbasis has an open source SDK here on our public repo and GitHub, and we previously open sourced the entire code base of the Playbasis system that we developed from 2020, let's say 2013 to up to end of 2020, basically. So like 7-8 years of development, and over that time span, we also invested in building a market, in developing it, creating this sort of mini industry, and hiring folks and hiring contractors and vendors, and all in all, investing $1 million capitalized at the time into the company in the form of our technology asset. But technology assets without constant updates will depreciate. They will depreciate in value. They will, you have to keep them constantly updated. So the Playbasis technology that we developed and created over all those years and invested, let's call it $1 million, if you will, in capital expense, capitalized as our intangible asset, basically taking all the developer salaries over the years and adding that up and then capitalizing that, and that was about $1 million. And then with that, we were able to generate $1 million of revenue for the business. That was free cash flow that came into the business. And so we basically were at break even and, force majeure and stuff like that. So that was completely out of our control. But with the new Playbasis, we're kind of picking up where we left off. So the new Playbasis is, in the spirit of the old Playbasis, but just made like from scratch, using all state-of-the-art technology and mirroring all the same functionality, but then adding so much more. And generative AI was the missing piece. That was what we were waiting for. We saw it. We knew it was going to come here, and it could change, everything for us if we could get it wired up and integrated, and if the state of the art was workable and usable, and it wasn't at the time. It wasn't in 2019. It wasn't in 2020. But you could see the path there. You could see the trajectory, and that's what we were projecting, and that's what we were planning. But unfortunately we couldn't make it as a going concern. So force majeure with everything, and then so the Playbasis open source code base has not been updated in a number of years. But we still have people who are installing our technology, the old one, and finding it, because if you search on all of the chatbots, ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, DeepSeek, even all of them, they would know about Playbasis. And this is not something that they had to search for and try to figure out what is Playbasis. It's actually a foundational embedded knowledge in a snapshot of time of the internets that existed during those years. And so it's forever there as something that has some knowledge and information and institutional knowledge and some idea formed around it. And people today are still searching, and occasionally we will get recommended, Playbasis will get brought up, mentioned, recommended as one of the leading players in this particular niche, in this particular space. And so I still see that there are people who are downloading the older SDKs tied to the older platform that hasn't been updated. But that tells me that there's still demand. So I believe that, if we can support more for the open source community and for all the builders who are trying to build something and want to make something cool, that has long been my vision. I've always wanted to make it easy to build these kind of apps, having these sort of consistent UIs and menus within an ecosystem, within a framework. And I was very inspired by my time working on Transformers, for example, and working before that on other video games and working on specifically online games. The Xbox and the PlayStation, Xbox Live and PlayStation Network had just launched. So I was part of Studio's very first effort of integrating the Xbox XDK and the PlayStation Network. And that's where the concept of badges and achievements became very standardized. And you could go with your Xbox gamer tag or your PlayStation Network account. You could go and collect achievements and trophies. Like Sony PlayStation called it trophies. Xbox calls it achievements. Here we call it badges. It's all kind of the same thing. And you could play all these different games, and every game would have these achievements. And eventually they made it a requirement to publish on PlayStation or Xbox. You needed to support the achievement system. And because the developers were trying to build one game that could work on both different platforms, like Sony PlayStation, Microsoft Xbox, and PC, they would end up developing kind of some core technology to do the achievements, if it's called achievements on Xbox or trophies on PlayStation, and they would embed that logic into the game. And we, as the playtesters, the game testers, had to unlock everything. We had to play the full game many different times to make sure that, yes, we could beat the game. Yes, we could unlock all the levels. Yes, we could unlock all the badges at the hardest difficulty. And they would ask us to record the gameplay so that we could measure how long does it take to play this game end to end. Are we delivering enough content? Right? Are we delivering enough fun? Where are people getting stuck? Where are they dying? Where are they dropping off the games? Right? So we were so important to launching products that millions of people would use, and they were all paying $40, $50, $60 for the game, right? So they expected a certain level of quality and some amount of content. And the badges and achievements in the Xbox Live system added more replayability to the games. It gave people more, I guess you could say, motivations to try and unlock a bunch of different things that even if they didn't unlock on the first playthrough, they could go back and play it again and try to unlock everything. So the idea of downloadable content, of achievement systems, of leaderboard systems, these are native to my occupational DNA. Like I've made it my business and my work and my passion. I've been lucky enough to, for so many years, combine all of these things. So whether it's writing websites, designing websites, writing database applications back in high school, taking that with me into college, accelerating and doing all of my college coursework, and then once I completed a couple of years of college and did all of the technical classes I wanted to take, then I jumped into working for a video game studio full-time professionally in San Diego, and I built a career of doing nothing but that for like 7 or 8 years, right? Working from one game studio to the next, sometimes in mobile games, sometimes on Nintendo games, sometimes on Xbox, PlayStation, PC games. Then coming to Thailand, and my very first job in Thailand as an official employee working in Thailand was building games here in Thailand. And we built games for the Xbox. And then I worked on Facebook games and iPhone games. And when the in-app purchase model was released, it was again sort of like this SDK that you'd have to add into your apps. And all of a sudden, you could do microtransactions and you could unlock content and you would have these sort of gamified elements into games themselves. And then from that whole experience of working in the industry and also studying and building my own websites and apps and designing games and stuff like that, I eventually founded a startup called Playbasis, which whole mission was to bring those fun elements that we liked about games, the building blocks, if you will, some of the supporting components, and allowing those to be seamlessly and elegantly and artfully integrated into non-gaming applications, to make some of the hard things in life a bit more fun, to make those healthy habits a bit easier to develop, right? And to make life a more rewarding experience. And again, was able to do that for another 8 years. So this is not something that I've just come or stumbled upon. This is the culmination and accumulation of my whole life's experience that I'm baking into this now. And there's still so much more to go. And I'm still very motivated, and I see so many opportunities. I don't think concept of Playbasis was a failure at all. I think I personally, as a leader, as a startup founder, I failed to keep the business going from year 8 to 9 to 10 to where we would be now, which would be, I guess it would be, we'd be on like year 13 or 14, I guess, right? That was my failure as a leader. But there were elements out of my control. There were forces and impacts that happened that's something that no one could prepare for, or no one had prepared for, or had ever even heard of really until 2020 and 2021. So then that's when I went back and started to deeply reflect and start to think about all the different things that I learned, the good and the bad, and then now with a new lease on life, so to speak, because of the new opportunities that generative AI provides, it means I can get back into the game much faster, and all of us can. And that legacy of Playbasis is not dead, and it didn't fail in that sense. As a brand, as a concept, if anything, that market is now even more vibrant and even more entrenched. There are more players now who basically copied what Playbasis did well and tried to pick up some of the unmet demand that existed for all those years that Playbasis was not operational. And I realized I have to build back that trust with the developer community, and the way I'm trying to do that is through the open source software development kits. So you can see the level of quality. Hopefully this can be a way for you to plug and play, and then bringing, I guess at this point, more than 3 full years of working with generative AI every single day within a coding and app building perspective, knowing everything that LLMs can do today, like end to end. I know what their capabilities are, their limitations, so on and so forth. I've even trained my own models. I've trained my own transformers, post-trained them. I've written lots of machine learning. And generative AI is basically just the ability to reason through. You can think of it as reason through, like basically it's a way for all of machine learning kind of can live within generative AI. So it basically kind of replaces the machine learning, but Not totally. There's still uses for machine learning, but the point being is that generative AI is extremely capable. So um, it's getting much better at doing things like math. And then there are things you can do to ground it within your actual context. And there are things you can do with the data to ensure that it maps and fits exactly your schema, and that you prevent any hallucinations, and you make sure that the generative AI stuff is giving you advice or suggestions that you can actually rely on. And the great thing about using Playbasis as your gateway or your portal of leveraging generative AI within maybe even a regulated industry like finance is that you can start in this sandbox environment where it's only touching the play-based experience stuff and maybe some loyalty and rewards if you want it to, but it doesn't actually have to have access to any personal information or manage your accounts for you. So this can be a way for companies to adopt generative AI, gamified loyalty using Playbasis all in one. And I'm extremely motivated to do this because my son, NONG Po he's my inspiration, he's my motivation, and he's the perfect player who never misses a day, and he has to have activities every single day, 365 days of the year. He's going to be with me pretty much every single day of his life, and I have to help develop him and make sure that he's healthy, happy, learning, and everything else like that. So I'm also going to be developing some more educational based use cases for the Playbasis technology. But this is an example of how you could use it for a fintech example or a fintech use case where you want to save, let's say, $5,500 for your upcoming healthcare expenses in 2 months. Okay, that's all for now, guys. Thank you very much for bearing with me through this rambling video, but I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you learned something. And I look forward to the next one. Talk to y'all soon. Bye.